All right. Who we got next? Read Jerome. Hey, man.
How's it going?
Good.
Yeah, good to be here. I'm a big fan.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
so I guess my question would be like related to animal ethics.
Okay.
Um, so what is what characteristic or characteristics of like say a pig, um,
Hmm.
that you may have heard this before, that if applied to a human would justify farming humans the same way that we farm pigs.
Yeah, that's Peter Singer's argument, and he's written rather extensively about that. He's the Australian ethicist.
Hmm.
I think he's a vegetarian. I don't think he's a vegan though.
He calls himself a flexible vegan, which yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's interesting. I think most people who would call themselves, who would quote unquote self-identify, would not call them, who, as vegans, would not call themselves flexible. But anyway,
Yeah.
or maybe they'd say, I heard a guy once at a restaurant say, I'm an excellent vegetarian, but a mediocre vegan. Anyway, neither here nor there to split the differences. Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I try not to eat pork unless it's very specifically a kind of raised pork. I try to not eat factory farmed meat. It's hard because Reed and I travel a lot. Um, I've thought about that. I do have. I I do. So Michael Schellenberger said something very interesting to me. He said that we anthropomorphize animal rights and we think that cows, and I'm not saying this is true or not, I'm just reporting what he
Sure.
said to me. He said that we anthropomorphize and think because we would want to live in a field and just roam around and eat, you know, well, not grass, but eat whatever we eat. But cows actually don't want that. They're perfectly fine standing in one spot and just eating at the trough. They're perfectly. I don't know how somebody would figure out how happy a cow is, but I think that the larger question is clearly there we have society has drawn some lines. You could say that those lines are arbitrary or not arbitrary in terms of which species will eat. And it seems to be lower on the consciousness scale and further from us genetically where I was debating whether the word should be further or farther. We would have less of a moral problem eating them, but I do struggle that, and I know. So I'll overshare if you don't mind. So I suffer from Crohn's disease, and I know that when my um, intake of animal fat is high, I'm healthier, and when my intake of animal fat is low, I get sick and I get out of remission. So that's another piece of the calculus that you'd have to figure out is to what extent is your personal to what extent ought one to compromise one's morality and increase the suffering of conscious creatures if it benefits you directly. Certainly, egoism has to play some kind of a role and the formulation of that. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, but I've definitely struggled with your question a lot.
Sure. Yeah. So like, I guess the responses would just be like, as far as health goes, like if it was healthiest to eat humans, would that be like healthiest to farm humans? Would that then justify farming humans?
If you could farm them without a brain and you just farm their body, I know that's a little creepy to think
Oh,
about.
well, yeah. So you could also just say something like farming like uh humans that are that aren't like all mentally there. So like with like the same like
Yeah,
conscious
that
capability
yeah.
of like a cow or a pig or something.
Yeah, Peter Singer has that again with people who
Yeah.
have IQs under 25. He wrote or edited a book. Um, um, At the moment you hang up, it's going to come to me. With Kitty Fetter on this, whose daughter suffers from an extreme cognitive disability with IQ below 25, and he basically argues in that book. God, I can't. It's killing me. I can't remember. But the people who have IQs under 25 should basically be treated like pigs or cattle, right? That they just have no, they're not sovereign individuals and they have no rights. 25, that you can't function on your own. I don't think I would have to really jerry rig your question. There would have to be some utterly extraordinary circumstance where I would eat a human being. And I certainly wouldn't advocate for the large scale cultivations of humans to be eaten. That's the modest proposal thing.
Yeah, and then
Jonathan Swiss modest proposal. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, like it would take a lot of like a pretty significant circumstances for you to eat a human. So then it just, circles back to the original question, right? What's the moral difference between a pig, that if true of a human? Yeah.
Yeah, my neighbor, I can't disclose where I am now because I have safety issues, but my neighbor over here, I'm in the middle of nowhere. He raises pigs, and I'm constantly struck by. I think so we have different terms here. We have consciousness, sentience, and intelligence, and it would seem that the moral demarcation would be contingent upon their intelligence. And the more we learn about animals, it does seem to me, now we've learned that I was reading something from Jane Goodall's earlier work last week. I think bonobos use sticks as instruments to pull out bugs out of logs. The more we learn about animals, the more intelligent that they are. I will say I love dogs. I'm a huge dog fan, and Reed and I are going to be traveling in Asia. And I think I would need to go through years of psychological counseling if I ever accidentally ate a dog. So I don't know how to answer your question because I don't know what. I think it's so ethically murky anyway, and how you balance your own health with the well-being of conscious creatures is a question that I do not have an answer to.
Okay.
And one more thing. I also want to say that I don't know. My gut tells me, and I could be totally wrong about this, that factory farming is pretty grisly. I could be anthropomorphizing and imposing my standards of how I would want to live, like what Michael Schellenberger said to me. So I don't know, but what I would love, if I could wave a wand and give me anything I wanted, I would love if we industrially raised large-scale farms in which we cloned animals without brains. And then, like, I'm specifically thinking about cows and pigs. Then I would have no moral problem whatsoever, and I would eat a ton of meat. We're close to that. They've done that with chicken.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's like things with like lab grown meat, which is really interesting. Yeah, I would just I would recommend you talk with this guy Lifting Vegan Logic. So he's vegan. He's an activist, but he also has Crohn's disease. So
wow, that would be brutal. Well, I couldn't imagine that. Oh my gosh. Wow,
but yeah, his claim is that like veganism has helped like cure his Crohn's disease, like helped with it. So I wonder if you guys could talk to each other and maybe find some common ground there. Yeah.
Please post his name in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Jerome. Thanks, man. Good questions. I hope that those musings were at least a little interesting to you. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, man. All right, Reed, who we got?